Hello YouTube. I'm going to be doing a video today on my budget Simracing PC, and I thought I would have a crack at finding an old second-hand PC that was perfectly capable, the priority being a decent central processing unit. I had a little look online, I can't find the exact advert, but I bought myself a Dell Elitedesk small form factor PC. I believe it's the 800 series, something like that. But I bought it because it has an i5-4570 processor in it. Pleasingly, it has worked out quite well. The primary reason for me buying this computer was to do sim racing on and a light bit of work at home. It works well for sim racing. I'm going to go through a few of my favourite titles. The one I use the most is R-Factor 2. I haven't used iRacing yet, but I believe it would perform pretty capably there. Just a few more things about this PC itself. It came with a solid-state disk of 256 gigabytes, I believe it was. It has 8 gig of RAM, but they're not a matched pair. It seems to be fine. I bought myself a decent graphics processing unit. Now, because the one I bought is a small form factor PC, I was governed by size and power restrictions. This PC is governed by a somewhat wimpy 240 watt power unit, and it's not really feasible to upgrade it. But having said that, I have never managed to exceed about half of that. I should mention that because this PC is a small form factor case, you can't put anything too big in it. So you really do need a low profile GPU, otherwise you're cutting holes out of your case. Besides that, the power supply won't cater for it. I bought a 1050 Ti secondhand as well. It was about £150, and I have to say I've been very impressed by it. It's worked very well out the box, not really any tweaking, I haven't overclocked it, and generally the graphics settings I can run are pretty good. I also bought a hard disk 1TB Seagate unit, and that was 40 quid, something like that. I can actually run quite a lot of games off of that 1TB hard drive unit, and that runs just as quickly as the solid state drive. So I went in with the mentality that this PC might just be something that gets me into it, and if I enjoy the sim racing thing, I could get a much more capable computer later. So on to how much it cost me then. I honestly can't remember, but the number 310 sticks in my head for what I paid for the PC, GPU, and the hard drive. I had a little look online to see if anyone else had the same combo as that I was looking to buy, the i5-4570 processor and the 1050 Ti GPU, and I managed to find a video of someone that even plays the same title as I do, and the results were impressive. And there are tons of videos of other titles, games that are maybe more to your taste than mine, so there's plenty out there. I'll move on to some screen recordings of me driving some of these sims, and I'll just put a caveat against everything that it was all running a lot better when I first got it. I've now filled up my hard drive, about 80% of it. It's all R-Factor 2 mods and things like that. So it did run better, now it's a bit slow. When I play these screen grabs back to you, I've actually got MSI Afterburner running, which should hopefully give you an idea of what the CPU and the GPU are playing at. I've tried to use the same car track combo in each sim, with the exception of a few where I couldn't do it, just so that you can have a direct comparison between the different sims. R-Factor 2, my favourite sim racing title. This game is actually a very accessible title because it's not hugely GPU or CPU heavy. Now, when it first came out, there was a bit of an issue for some users in that it was a very complex physics model, which meant that a lot of people's CPU couldn't handle it. However, nowadays, it's actually not so bad. In fact, I find my CPU is running something like 50% most of the time. If you're someone that likes to race against AI, the AI themselves are actually on a simplified physics model, which means that it's not as CPU intensive as it could be for titles such as ACC, which have a much better AI physics model. It can be infuriating at times because you do find that the AI are able to take lines, brake later than you, basically do things that are less realistic. But ultimately, I find it a very good experience. It has to be said, Studio 397 have put a lot of effort into improving the title, so graphics these days are pretty good. It runs very, very smoothly on this machine indeed. I find that I can have my graphics settings very high, and generally it all works very smoothly. On some complex tracks, such as DLC, versions of Spa, Le Mans and Nürburgring, it is quite difficult to run it at high graphics and get a smooth frame rate, so sometimes I have to drop it down. Racing against friends in servers actually is much better on the CPU, but the GPU I find still struggles a bit depending on the track. Some of the earlier tracks are absolutely fine, and some mod tracks also. It just depends all on the car and track combo. You might see here I've put in a huge number of AI racers against me, and it is struggling a bit. If I drop the number of AI down, it tends to make things a bit better, but this is a CPU rather than GPU bottleneck, so reducing the graphics settings won't particularly help. The only thing I can really do is reduce the number of AI drivers. Or if a race is hosted on someone else's server on multiplayer mode, your CPU won't take the hit, it'll be theirs. Mine's run really well in this scenario. It's interesting because the results vary massively depending on what track and car combo is running. It usually is just some of the more complex modelled ones with all sorts of foliage and detail. Initially produced by developers ISI, you might find that some of the early content looks quite dated but runs very well. The title was then purchased by Studio 397, who have put a massive amount of work in improving the title, increasing the amount of online races and developing a driver rating system to improve the online experience even further. The servers are usually quite quiet compared to other titles, but they're certainly getting a bit more busy. The title is due to be acquired by Le Mans and NASCAR giants Motorsport Games, who look like they're going to just leave Studio 397 to do their own thing. The game has been criticised for not having very good graphics compared to other titles. It must be said that with only a recent move towards DX11, it's definitely picking up a lot more. I think my favourite car and track combo visually is the Bridgehampton circuit and the fantastic Flat 6 Series Porsche 911 mod. Just fantastic. So the next title I want to talk about is Assetto Corsa, the original version. Now this is also quite an old title, so things tend to run quite well. I'm actually running this with the Soul mod, which basically improves the graphics, lets you put different weather into the sim. It doesn't really affect the handling or physics much, but you can get snow, fog, rain, where the original sim doesn't let you do that. It runs really smoothly, like I say. I mean, I can actually have 24 opponents, which is the max number, no problem at all. I've actually got rid of them because I find the AI handle really annoyingly. So I think I've only got a few on this screen grab at the moment. But yeah, it looks really good. No issues at all with the CPU or GPU, and generally very playable indeed. It doesn't really seem to mind much if I'm using a mod that isn't official, and some of the official DLC content itself doesn't tend to have much effect on it, even if it's of higher quality than others, let's say. So yeah, this all runs fine. Move on to the next one. AC's later compatriot, let's say. ACC is a more resource-hungry sim to run overall. Across the different titles, this is certainly for me the most demanding one to run, and due to it being quite a modern and new game running Unreal Engine, it tends to require quite a lot of horsepower, let's say. Basically, it does stretch the GPU very far indeed. The graphics engine, I have to say, isn't optimized particularly well, so people do find that they're spending a lot of money before they find that they're actually able to run the sim. I will say that this isn't the smoothest running one on this machine. I can run graphics quite high, but that generally only happens if I'm running a track that doesn't have a lot of foliage, i.e. not Spa, and particularly in practice mode where there's not a significant amount of AI that I'm up against. Interestingly, it does bottleneck more at the CPU side of things. The physics is quite complex. It's definitely a little bit juddery when I run high graphics settings, but it's playable enough. I wouldn't buy this PC if this was the only title that you wanted to run. You might find that you'd need to upgrade quite soon, and that is not really the point in buying this type of computer. Having said that, ACC does have a really good online community, so you might find that when you're up against real people and it's all streamed direct via the internet, and let's just say you need a good internet connection for that as well, you're not going to find that the PC's really struggling as much as you were racing, let's say, a huge number of AI races. You can see that I don't have a large amount of AI in this screen grab at the moment, and that's because I can't really do many more than this. At the beginning of the race, certainly, I get a lot of screen drops, it's very juddery to run, and altogether isn't the most pleasurable playing experience, so it's a bit of a downer. I mean, the joy of GT3 racing is chucking a lot of opponents in, and really getting in amongst the pack, particularly when this game is so well optimized to simulate that type of experience. But it's playable. Yeah, I do quite enjoy this sim. Physics are very good, and it's not a surprise really that it is so demanding. So, Project Cars 2. This is the first simcade that I got my hands on, just because it was a familiar name. My mate had Project Cars 1, thought I'd give it a go. And yeah, let's just say that the physics engine has been a little bit slated, and I think I'll just leave that there. It looks good, runs completely fine. Let's move on with our lives. Unless you really like Project Cars 2, in which case I'll just talk for a bit so you can see the graphics for a bit longer.
F1 2020.
For anyone that likes Formula 1, this is the latest, or if you're watching this in 2021, second latest title to play Formula 1 in an arcade way. Yeah, it runs perfectly well. The AI are doing the things they do, which is basically drivers that would never be right at the front will be right at the front. For some reason, Giovinazzi is always second or third, which would be really great because he does look like Jesus. But anyway, it's fine. It runs really well. That's about all of it, really. I don't think the physics engine's hugely complex. The graphics look good. Typical Codemasters game. Good franchise to get your teeth into it. Dirt Rally 2. What a wonderfully beautiful game. I think I'll just start off by saying that Dirt Rally 2 seems to be modelled, rather than the scenery is modelled, slightly different to Dirt Rally 1. It seems like they've simplified the modelling, which is naughty, but it does allow a more optimised graphic flow. Yeah, I mean, I think it looks really good. What I've done is I've taken you to Poland and I've run it at the evening wet time setting just because I think it looks glorious. Hopefully you'll pick up on all these reflections just dancing merrily. They're shimmering, they look so good. I can run this at pretty high settings, to be honest, and it's happy to chug away. There are a few drops in frame rate, as you can probably see at the top right, but yeah, I mean, you can drop them and play it perfectly well. It all depends what kind of experience you want, and it does tend to vary track by track, but altogether very, very playable indeed. So, I did mention that a couple of mates and they are real mates. They're real. We play a couple of mess around kind of chill out games just for relaxation, basically. So one of those is called Mudrunner. It basically simulates logging in Siberia, and why you would go into that, I don't think I need to sell it anymore. I think you want to do it. And the good news is, if you don't want to do logging with logging trucks, you can download a huge amount of mod content online, which allows you to just basically piss about in all sorts of off-roading vehicles, which is great fun. It's got quite a decent physics engine in it, and a lot of people tune in just for that alone. It runs itself perfectly happily on the PC. It does seem to have a frame rate limit of like 45 FPS, but it works really well. I'm running, I think it's called a Dagger. It's a graphics mod, which just makes the game look less bleak, as if Siberian logging needed to be more bleak. Another one of the games that we use is called Wreckfest. Now, Wreckfest is great fun, just because the soft body, malleableness, what would you call it? Soft body physics, I'm going to say, are just hilarious. You can race with loads of people online, race, banger race, destruction derby, last man standing. And it's just so satisfying. Bits of the car fall off, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll cheer as you see your mates flatten to the whip with an A4 bit of paper, or if you're in the US, letter. It runs completely fine, there's no issues, the graphics are actually pretty good, it's just an all-round hoot. So, games what aren't racing ones, or simulator ones that aren't games, because people get offended if you call them games and not simulators. Yeah, I think this needs another video, to be honest. I've put this computer up against my laptop, which has a newer CPU. There's varying results, really. It's a very capable machine altogether, so I'm going to segue into a summary where I'm going to tell you what I've told you before, just in less words. Essentially, this is a great PC to get started with. It costs very little money for what you're getting. Underpay that to a new one, and the value that you're getting is tremendous. Obviously, there is a slight risk that you pick up one that isn't running too well, or you might find that you overpay or underpay, and you wonder how the heck they got their hands on that bit of kit for that little money. Don't think about it. It's all on Facebook. It's all down to them. But the point is, yeah, the only reason that I would like to personally upgrade is if I got a triple monitor setup. I haven't mentioned, because I'm a doofus, that I'm running a single monitor 27-inch, and it runs really well. I don't have space for a triple monitor setup, and I'm putting money towards other things that are supposed to be more important. If I got triple monitors, I think that would trigger a bit of a chain reaction. I think I would then need a more capable graphics card to run everything as well as I'm used to at the moment, and then to do that, consequently, I would need to upgrade the power supply. That's very difficult in this computer. I touched on that earlier, so essentially that would probably mean buying or building a new one, which is fine, but I do think if you were someone that wanted to get into sim racing, not spend a lot of money, just just try it out, then you can't really do much better. I've been really impressed with everything, and I think I probably won't upgrade for quite a while yet. I did say for those people that love ACC that it's probably not the PC for you if you want to do it. That's a bit unfair. That's not necessarily true. If you're someone like me who favours frame rate over graphics settings, you could run everything quite low quality and have some great racing, and I don't think the computer would let you down. I'm certainly going to keep it as it is for quite a while yet, I think. Who knows? Let's see what happens. We've had a few unexpected turns this year. We never know. In terms of reliability, this computer has crashed on me, I think, twice really that I remember. It was R-Factor 2, and in both occasions on a very demanding DLC track. I'm pretty sure I overloaded it because once I sorted the graphics settings, or rather wound them down a bit, it was completely fine. Hopefully that concludes, and a bit more. If you've got any questions at all, leave me a comment below. Thank you very much for watching.